Hello and welcome to yet another video, and in this video it is something a little bit special and different than usual because in this video I'll be talking about this lens right here. It's the Brightin Star 50mm f/0.95, and yes, that's the key feature of this lens, the f/0.95, because I usually work up to just f/1.2, well, but it is still a very shallow depth of field lens, and furthermore this is a very affordable lens. It's only around 350 euros, but to be honest it really outputs great results for its price. So in this video I'll be sharing my experience, my thoughts on this lens with you all in case you're looking into getting this lens as well. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the 50mm f/0.95 from Brightin Star, to be honest with you all, when I first heard about this lens, it kind of like got me interested, but not fully, because it was a really budget lens and I was very skeptical about the glass and how it will perform, things like that. But after having done several shoots with this lens, and two of those shoots happen to be on my channel as well, so you can always go and see those shoots, the results definitely blow me away, especially for the price point. In this video, it's not going to be a full review video just like any of my videos. It's just going to be about my thoughts based on, you know, my experience using this equipment, which is the lens itself. And just, you know, for the testing purposes, I use it with my main camera, the R5, rather than with the lower megapixel count of the R6, the R, things like that. I just wanted to see where I can really push this lens to, and under which circumstances it can really stand to. And in this video, I'll be sharing with you my honest opinion on this lens. And as usual, I'll be dividing this video into three different sections. The first is going to be about the ergonomics, the usability of this lens, leading down into the image quality, and then leading down into the conclusion. So let's first start with the build quality, the usability of this lens. Well, this lens is actually built like a tank. Despite its price point, it's actually built quite well. Everything seems to be metal. You can hear it from this internal built-in, not internal, but just built-in lens hood right here, which is actually quite nice and handy. But in the same time, I do wish that it would be more resistant. Like there would be more resistance with the barrel and the actual hood. I mean, you can completely rotate this hood, for example, and sometimes when you're angling it up, it sometimes falls down on its own weight. So, you know, that's not always promising, but at the same time, it's still really nice just to have it there. And it is metal, and inside it's matte, so it's not reflecting any light onto, well, inside the lens. So that's actually pretty good. Another point is the focus ring. The focus ring is like some of the smoothest focus ring I've ever tried, especially the mechanical ones. This is very consistently smooth, especially for its price point. It's very consistent, which is actually very nice because this lens is a 0.95 lens, and also you have to be very, very still in order to focus that very thin plane of focus. So having this very smooth, very resistant focus ring is very, very nice to have on this particular lens. And of course the mount itself is metal, so that's actually quite nice. So overall the build quality is very durable. The focus ring is, you know, some of the best focus and some of the smoothest focus ring you'll ever turn or rotate on this price point of a lens. But the downside though is actually the aperture ring right here. I do wish that it's more of like a third increment of marking, because for example on this one from f/0.95, if you accidentally knock it, it'll just go to f/1.4 right away. There's no f1, f1.2, and then f1.4. It's just f/0.95, f4, f2. So it's like a full stop of settings. So I do wish that there would be like a third of an increment in there, because sometimes you don't want to go all the way to the dark side of 1.4 or f2, because when getting this lens you tend to want to shoot between f/0.95 and f1.2 or even f1. So yeah, but you know, there's that. That being said, having a really nice marking like a very clear marking and a very clear sound click is also very nice, so you that like most of the time you will know when you actually change your aperture, so that's actually pretty good. But otherwise there's not really much else to add. It's just overall a very nice build quality lens, and yeah, if there's any improvement, it would actually be a third of a stop up here, and also just a little bit more friction on the actual aperture ring itself. And before we move on into the image quality, I would like to just touch on one point. If you're a photographer like me and not having a weather sealing in this lens is a deal breaker, then I would like to say that this lens, apart from not having a weather sealing, what it makes up in is the build quality. It is very solid. Of course, I wouldn't recommend shooting it in super moistured environment or super wet environment, things like that. But you know, everything else about this build quality is really nice, from the consistent, like very smooth focus ring all the way to the actual metal build quality. So you still can work with this lens under a certain kind of harsh environment, just not wet or super sandy environment. So just keep that in mind. Now over into the image quality. The image quality coming out of this lens is great once you actually get the focusing plane of focus where, like exactly where you want it, because f0.95 is very shallow. But if you want a sharper result, you might want to go up to f2 or f2.8. That's where you'll see the sharpness completely increase, like dramatically increase from the center to corner sharpness. And also you'll get rid of the most of the vignetting on the corners. At f0.95, there are vignettings around the corners, just saying, but like if you're a portrait photographer like me, for example, then you might actually prefer to have those vignetting as well, because I personally like those vignettings. But for those who just like their images to be completely flat, like evenly lit up, then you know the vignetting might be kind of like either a deal breaker or something that you might have to spend an extra 10 or 20 seconds fixing later in post, which is of course not a lot of time, but you know, just saying for some of you who are really into vignetting or not into vignetting that much. The f0.95 also brings a lot of the chromatic aberration. If you know how to avoid certain lighting, then you'll be completely fine. And of course, if you're post-processing your images like I am, then you can easily get rid of the chromatic aberration within a matter of just 2 seconds or 5 seconds, depending on which program you use. But the the chromatic aberration is very consistent as well, so nothing to surprise you. If you're used to the character of the lens already, it's going to be easy to just correct all the color fringing and chromatic aberration on different images all in a row as a batch. So yeah, there is that. But otherwise, the actual images out of this lens has some sort of really unique character to it. So it's not very clinically sharp, but there is some really nice soft character to the out of focus. I really like the background blur as well. It's not very clinical that everything is perfect, but in the same time, the character of it is actually very nice. So it does give like a vibe between modern and classic, like classic lenses that, you know, has softer bokeh and also kind of like inconsistent bokeh as well, but not too distracting. But in the same time, having the detail and the sharpness of a more modern lens, just not clinically sharp or clinically detailed, just still within the realm of very sharp and very detailed. So yeah, there's not really much to say about that either, but just yeah, the rendition between the colors, the contrast is also very punchy, especially if you're shooting at f2 and above. But if you're just shooting at f0.95, there is still nice and punchy contrast, just not as contrast as, let's say, when you're shooting at f1.2 of the RF51.2. That's a completely different beast. But within its price point and given the aperture that you're shooting, the contrast coming out of the lens is actually quite nice. That being said, of course, you can just spend about a second or two just boosting up the contrast a little bit more in post if you want more contrast, of course. But otherwise, I would just say the rendition of the colors are very nice and pleasant. And I really love the character that's coming out of this lens, the rendition and everything. So that's actually pretty good. And the color depth are also pretty nice. If you can work around the color fringing, then yeah, it's a great lens to really experiment with. Which leads me into the conclusion of this video. I know that this is a very short video compared to all of my other gear talk, but in the same time, it's a very simple lens. There's no electronics in there, there's no AF system in here, it's all manual focus. So everything you do, how fast the focus is, really depends on your skills on, you know, mastering the focus ring here and really predicting which distance and really relying on the focus peaking or whatever you have turned on as your manual focus assisting system in your camera. It's a really nice and consistent lens and one that you can really experiment with. And also being f/0.95, it really allows you to take this lens and of course therefore the camera system or setup to many unique lighting environments where you wouldn't be able to get with your, let's say, an f2 lens or an f2.8 lens, you know. So that is something that's very unique. And also because of the design of this lens, when you're shooting portraits, most of your models or most of the people you're shooting portraits with will just not bother by how professional it looks, but just, you know, be more chill, more calm, and could really work to your advantage. So that's actually quite nice. And of course, having no electronics in here, if you're going to like harsh environments where you don't want to baby your equipment, this will take a beating. It will definitely, but it just won't take if you're shooting in, let's say, really sandy or really humid, or really moistured environment. So just be careful about those, but otherwise, yeah, it's a very tough lens and it has some weight to it, of course, at f/0.95. So yeah, there's that. I would really highly recommend this lens if you're just wanting to experiment into the 50 and also into the f/0.95. And I would also recommend if you just know what you're doing and know what this sort of like soft but yet sharp lens can really deliver to your work, I would also highly recommend that. But if you're just completely starting out and learning about 50mm, this might not be the lens for you. I mean, you still can experiment with it, but you might be better off with the, let's say the 1.8 or the secondhand 1.4 50mm lenses that will allow you to have, you know, more automated features like the autofocusing system and also slightly better chromatic aberration control, things like that. So you'll be able to learn more about the 50mm focal range and also enjoy the actual photography process more on that front. But of course, if you just really want to try and experiment with just full-time manual focus lenses, feel free to do that as well. So yeah, otherwise, I really like this lens a lot, and I hope that this video actually helps you a little bit if you're looking to this lens as well, because it's also not really that expensive. It's only 350 euros, also $350 around that area, give or take. Yeah. Whew. Anyway, that's it for this short video. If you need a free photography guidebook, it's absolutely for free on my website. Just click the link down in the description section below. If you need to access my photography courses, if you want to learn something as well, some of my free photography courses should already be available on the website by now. It's also available on the website. The link is also down in the description section below as well. Otherwise, if you have anything to share, any suggestions, any recommendations, feel free to also just comment down in the comment section below as well. Otherwise, I thank you all very much for watching. Stay safe, have fun shooting. Till next time, bye for now.